On my birthday, my husband and children gave me divorce papers and took my marriage, home, and fortune. But before I share my story, please take a minute of your precious time to support our channel. Your support and love keeps us going. On the morning of my 58th birthday, my husband and our 2 grown children handed me a folder that contained both divorce papers and an eviction notice. They had arranged everything: house, accounts, family, company, gone in an instant. My daughter sneered, calling me pathetic, and the 3 of them laughed as though I were the punchline of some cruel joke. I smiled faintly, signed where they pointed without trembling, and walked out of my own home as if it were a stranger's house. What they didn't know was that within a week, I would watch my phone fill with more than 3 dozen missed calls, each one dripping with panic. Karma was already circling them, faster than they could imagine. The night before my birthday party, I pressed my ear against the air vent in the bedroom, the one that carried voices up from my husband's office. From below came the sound of my daughter Tasha's laughter drifting up like smoke. "She actually thinks tomorrow's about her birthday," she whispered. Then my son Malik's voice followed, sharp and doubtful. "Dad, you sure that lawyer said the eviction notice is legit?" My husband, Leonard, answered in his deep, casual tone. "It's all handled. The deeds transferred, the divorce packets prepared. The business is legally shifted into my name. Tomorrow night, she won't own anything except that busted Chrysler she keeps clinging to." I stayed frozen on the carpet, my knees pressing into the fibers while my family spoke about erasing me as if I were a clerical error. Through the vent, I heard papers shuffling, chairs scraping. Malik's voice was steady now, the same courtroom cadence he had learned at law school. "I've structured the filings, so she can't claim manipulation. As long as she signs willingly, believing it's something else, we're safe." Tasha chimed in, eager. "And Monique's ready to move in this weekend?" Monique Evans. Her name had floated through our social circles for months now. A widow who had inherited a profitable trucking outfit from her late husband. "She knows the schedule," Leonard replied, his voice soft in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "She's already moved her things into the downtown storage unit. Once Evelyn is gone, we start fresh." I backed away from the vent silently, realizing the thick carpeting I had chosen years ago for comfort was now shielding my eavesdropping. My own interior design decision had turned into a tool for survival. At the window, I stared out at the backyard. We had raised our children there, watched them chase each other across the grass. The swing set was long gone, replaced by Leonard's garage workshop, but I could still see the ghost of its outline in the bare patch that never grew back. They had been planning my disappearance for months, while I was the one balancing accounts, confirming deliveries, managing clients, the invisible labor that held everything together. That morning alone, I had already corrected 3 errors in Malik's paperwork for the company, scheduled next week's supply chain deliveries, and reconciled the payroll he claimed to be handling. And yet, to them, I was dispensable. I opened the closet and reached for the small overnight bag from the top shelf. My hands moved on autopilot, folding jeans, blouses, and pulling out keepsakes that predated my marriage. The beaded necklace my grandmother gave me at graduation, the silver watch I had bought with my first paycheck, a faded album of photos from my college days before Leonard ever crossed my path. Downstairs, I heard the front door open and the familiar sound of each of them scattering. Leonard's heavy boots thudded toward the kitchen. Malik's quick steps headed out, likely back to the apartment I had co-signed when he couldn't get approved. Tasha's heels clicked toward the garage, where her Lexus waited, the one we had given her when she finished her degree. I tucked the overnight bag away, descended the stairs, and moved through the kitchen like nothing had changed. Leonard was pouring coffee into his chipped, world's best dad mug, the one Malik had given him in high school. He looked up briefly, and I caught a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe anticipation, before it vanished. "Morning plans?" I asked calmly, pulling my own mug from the cabinet. "Just paperwork," he muttered, eyes fixed on his cup. "Tomorrow's a big day," I said softly, watching the cream swirl into my coffee. 58 years. Suppose that's worth celebrating. "We got something special planned," he replied, lips curling into a smile that never reached his eyes. I let the moment pass. The silence between us said everything. Later, I drove to our company's warehouse. Our longtime manager, Curtis, met me at the loading bay with worry etched across his face. Ms. E, he whispered, lowering his voice. Something ain't right. 3 shipments vanished this month. Oak planks, granite slabs, all marked as received, but they never came in. Cameras just happened to go out those same nights. I touched his shoulder gently. Curtis had been with us from the start, loyal beyond measure. I know. Just document everything carefully. Every number, every detail. He looked confused by my calm, but I couldn't tell him the truth yet. That stolen lumber was the least of my concerns when my own family was gutting my life from the inside out. That evening, as Leonard worked in his office, I cooked dinner in silence. Through the vent came his low voice, too intimate for business, almost certainly speaking to Monique. Tomorrow, at the so-called celebration, they planned to serve me with papers. Tomorrow, they thought they would watch me break. But tonight, I moved with quiet precision, placing my phone on the counter where 3 numbers were already saved under favorites. Renee Johnson, forensic accountant. Marcus Boyd, corporate lawyer. Detective Jamal Lewis, who still had questions about a suspicious business partner's death a decade ago. They thought tomorrow would be their victory. They had no idea it was actually the opening act of my revenge. Morning came with Leonard standing at my bedside holding a cup of coffee and wearing a grin that looked rehearsed. He set the mug down with shaking hands. Happy birthday, Eve. Wear that burgundy wrap dress, the one we bought for our anniversary. He said it like a line he'd practiced, not a thought he'd had. The dress still had the tag on it. We'd never made it to that anniversary dinner. Leonard claimed a site emergency, though later I found a boutique receipt in his pocket for a 2-top in Midtown. I slipped into the dress anyway, watched him watch me from the doorway, his foot tapping a nervous rhythm I'd known since our first apartment. The stairs felt longer than usual. Family photos along the wall seemed to follow me down. In the living room, the furniture had been pushed against the edges, leaving an open square in the middle where our mahogany coffee table sat like a witness stand. A thick manila folder rested dead center. Dorian, now in his courtroom suit though it was Saturday, stood by the front door, feet planted wide as if blocking an exit. His phone was angled to record. Tasha leaned near the hallway to the garage, her own phone raised, a half-smile playing at her mouth. Leonard took the apex position behind the table. Please sit, Evelyn, he said, pointing me toward a kitchen chair they dragged in for the occasion. It wasn't my chair. It was a prop. Dorian cleared his throat, switching on his legal voice. We need to discuss modifications to our family and business structures. What you'll see are standard documents prepared with full consideration. Leonard opened the folder. Yellow tabs sprouted like weeds, marking every line where they wanted my name. So many tabs, so many little graves. Dorian began, unblinking. First, the dissolution of marriage. Given circumstances, the terms are more than fair. You'll retain your personal effects and the Chrysler. Second, transfer of your ownership in the company to Dad, reflecting his position as primary operator. Third, an agreement relinquishing claim to this property, acknowledging that mortgage and improvements reflect Dad's contributions. Each sentence landed with the precision of a hammer striking glass. But it was Leonard who swung for the heart. We've grown apart, Eve. You know it's true. This is better for everybody, fresh starts. He gestured vaguely toward the papers. Monique has been helping us plan next steps. She understands business. She understands what we need. Tasha lowered her phone just enough to look me in the face. We already moved your things to the garage. What's actually yours? Most of this life exists because Dad worked for it. Her smile sharpened. It's all sorted, labeled, and ready. Outside, I caught movement through the window. Mrs. Fulton across the street, watering plants that didn't need water. Mr. Price at his mailbox for the 3rd time. Word had traveled. Either they'd been warned or invited to watch me break. You're pathetic, Tasha said cleanly, like a rehearsed line. Dad built the company. Dorian's the legal mind. I have my own career. What do you even do except run on autopilot like a robot? Dorian's laugh was quick and metallic. Leonard's followed, high, brittle. It echoed in the home I had held together for decades with invisible hands. Another presence stepped from the kitchen, Rashad Keene, Dorian's law school friend, carrying a leather briefcase like a shield. I'm here as a witness to confirm signatures are voluntary, he announced, though no one had asked. The Montblanc pen I'd gifted Leonard after our first major contract appeared in his hand. He extended it to me, the same hand that had held mine in hospital rooms, at gravesides, at graduations. I took the pen. Its weight was familiar. The room fell silent enough to hear the heat click in the walls. I pulled the first document closer. Dorian adjusted his angle to capture my face. Tasha pinched to zoom. My signature flowed, first on the petition, then the transfer, then the quitclaim. The penmanship my mother drilled into me had become a blade. With each sweep, I released a house where I'd bandaged skinned knees, a firm I had grown from 2 job boxes and a rented forklift into a regional name, a marriage I had carried like a cathedral on my back. When the last tab was inked, I set the pen down gently. I rose, and I smiled, a quiet, genuine smile that unsettled them more than a scream could have. Thank you, I said. This simplifies everything. I left with 2 suitcases and steady hands. The old Chrysler coughed on the 3rd try, same as it always did. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. The extended stay motel sat 18 miles from the house, far enough that no one from our circle would see my plates in the lot. The clerk barely glanced up as I paid cash for a week. Room 214 smelled like disinfectant and lost plans, but the lock turned and no one stood over me with paperwork. I dropped the bags, set my phone to airplane mode, and slid out the SIM. They expected fireworks, calls to friends, crying, bargaining. Not tonight. Tonight, I needed silence and information. I had read every page while they thought I was merely reading. I'd also clicked 3 discrete photos behind the stack, angles that caught the headers, dates, and the worst clauses. Now, with the motel lamp buzzing, I went line by line. A non-compete clause barred me from working in modular building, urban restoration, or related sectors, within 300 miles for 5 years. Cute. Unenforceable under our state law for spouses and small business co-owners. They were counting on my ignorance. They had miscounted. I opened a notebook and began 2 columns. What they know versus what they don't. They don't know about the business account I opened 2 years ago when their numbers started to wobble. $46, $500 in clean consulting fees from side projects Leonard had called too small to bother with. They don't know about the storage unit under my maiden name, where my grandmother's heirlooms and my original contracts live. They don't know that half our suppliers work directly with me and would follow my phone call, not the company letterhead. At midnight, I walked to the business center and used the wall phone. Renee Johnson, came the voice on the second ring, my college roommate who'd turned herself into a forensic bloodhound for numbers. This is Evelyn. I need you. Quietly. Where and when? No shock, no delay. Renee had rescued too many women from financial traps to waste breath. Next call, Marcus Boyd. For years back, I had hidden his daughter Alana in our guest room for 3 weeks while he secured protective orders. He tried to repay me with checks. I told him to save it. I might need a favor someday. Marcus, I'm calling it in. My private entrance. 7 a.m., bring everything. The 3rd call rattled me the most. Detective Jamal Lewis. 10 years ago, he'd investigated the sudden death of Harold Evans, Monique's last husband, owner of a regional trucking supply firm. Heart attack, they'd ruled, even though he'd passed a physical a month before. Harold's assets had rolled to Monique, who sold at a peak, right after 3 government contracts landed where Harold had been competing. Detective Lewis, it's Evelyn Harper. I've uncovered something about Harold Evans and about Monique's previous spouse, Calvin Rhodes. That file's cold, he said. I heard the shift in his chair. Bring what you've got tomorrow afternoon. No promises, but bring it. By dawn, even with my phone powered off, the new email I'd spun up from the motel lobby showed a cascade of messages. 3 were from Curtis. each more urgent than the last. I called him from the lobby's dusty handset at 5:30 a.m. He would be at the warehouse. Curtis is always at the warehouse. Ms. E. Thank God. Mr. Leonard showed up at 4, with Ms. Evans. His voice dropped. He made me change every password. Said you're on medical leave. She was measuring offices, talking about tearing down the wall between accounting and dispatch. Curtis, I said gently, do exactly what they say and document everything. Dates, times, who signed what, any deliveries that don't match the spec. Keep your head down. Can you do that without drawing fire? You gave me a shot when nobody else would, he said. I got you. 2 hours later, the intelligence river was rushing. 3 major clients called Curtis directly, confused by Dorian's email announcing restructuring and price hikes. 2 suppliers reported someone had unilaterally changed terms from net 30 to net 90. On a downtown site, subgrade stone had arrived where premium was specified. An accident waiting to happen. Then the call I didn't expect. Evelyn? It's Ms. Nettie from the coffee shop on Pierce, the one where Leonard meets folks. She had tracked me through an old Chamber of Commerce friend. He's been there with that Monique woman every Tuesday and Thursday for a year and a half. Always the corner booth, whispering like a soap opera. My cousin works at the courthouse. That woman's filed a flurry of papers the last few weeks. And this is what's strange. She filed the same kinds of forms months before her second husband passed. Folks noticed because it felt early. The pattern snapped into focus, so sharp it hurt. Monique didn't simply chase owners. She replaced them after securing control. I made one more call to a private investigator recommended by Marcus for corporate messes. Sarah Dubose, she answered, voice cool and alert. I need background on Monique Evans. Discreetly. Sarah exhaled. Her name rings bells. I'll need a retainer. I can get you a preliminary by tomorrow. And Evelyn, if half the whispers are true, you're not in a simple divorce. You're in a survival contest. By mid-morning, my motel room wasn't a refuge anymore. It was a command post. Labeled folders, a laptop open to accounts they didn't know existed, a short list of people who would stand up for me because I had stood up for them when it counted. They believed they had cut me loose to drift. They had actually untied my hands. At 7 sharp, Renee knocked on my door with 2 laptops and a banker's box. She scanned the photos I'd taken, then the PDFs I had scraped from a shared drive before leaving. 3 years, she said after an hour, fingers flying. They've been skimming for 3 years, Eve. Once you know where to look, it's neon. She showed me phantom vendors, inflated invoices, losses on materials never delivered. The totals turned my stomach. Dorian's digital approvals dotted the trail like breadcrumbs, his law firm email lending legitimacy to transfers no real audit would accept. Tasha's name surfaced, too, on equipment sales routed through a third-party reseller at half market value. The buyer's LLC led to a gallery cooperative. Her gallery. Champagne openings paid for with stolen steel and lease machinery. Renee's last page stopped me cold. Monique's signature added to your business accounts 2 weeks before your birthday. They were so sure I would sign that they had given her pen access before the ink dried. My phone buzzed, a text from Curtis. Need to see you in person. Urgent. We met at a diner 5 miles from the warehouse. He slid into the booth looking like a man who hadn't slept. I stayed late, he said, eyes on the door. Pretending inventory. Around 9, Leonard walked in with Monique. He pulled out his phone. I recorded what I could. The audio was muffled but unmistakable. Leonard. Once the filings are done, we liquidate more aggressively. Monique, cool as winter. The timeline matters. She has to be completely out of any decision path. If she interferes, we handle it. I've handled worse. Curtis leaned closer. I checked the cameras this morning. Somebody deleted whole nights of footage this month. They forgot about the backup I installed in the ceiling. I've got everything. On his thumb drive, grainy video of Leonard and Monique photographing client lists, supplier agreements, inventory. In one frame, Monique points at our customer database while speaking into her phone. The timestamp was 3 weeks before my birthday. They've lined up out-of-state buyers, Curtis said. Folks who want the contracts, not the crews. If this goes through, everybody's out. On my way back to the motel, Detective Lewis called. Can you come down now? What I've pulled may change everything. His office looked the same, stacks of files, coffee cups that should have been retired. But his eyes were sharper than they'd been a decade ago. He spread out photographs and reports. Monique's first husband died at 47. Her second at 51. Both cremated within 48 hours, legal, but unusual. In the months before, both men increased life insurance. Both named Monique sole beneficiary. And both displayed symptoms consistent with cardiac glycosides, classic digitalis mimicry. He tapped a fresh printout. Leonard increased his policy last month. $2 million. You're primary until a divorce clears. Then Monique becomes primary. He looked up. We also recovered deleted texts from a phone she thought was wiped. They discuss permanent solutions and timelines about an obstacle. The context points to you. The room shrank around me. This wasn't just a financial ambush. It was a blueprint for erasure, then replacement. My cell buzzed again with an unfamiliar number. Michael Rivers, whose waterfront redevelopment represented a third of our active work. Evelyn, I'm calling you because nothing makes sense. Dorian missed our meeting and sent subgrade stone. My superintendent refused it. I also hear you're no longer with the firm. If you're standing something new up, I want to talk. Contracts can be reassigned if we meet the terms. 2 more clients reached out within the hour with the same story. Broken promises, wrong materials, missed inspections. The foundation of their competence, me, was gone, and the facade was cracking. By nightfall, I had 3 bankers' boxes of evidence. Fraud, conspiracy, sabotage. Renee traced schemes. Lewis connected deaths. Curtis preserved premeditated theft. Sarah's early brief hinted at 2 other suspicious deaths in different states tangentially linked to Monique circles. Timing, I reminded myself. Fire too early, and you singe. Fire on time, and you level the structure. The rain tapered to a fine mist against the motel window. Somewhere across town, in rooms I had chosen and paid for, my family slept well. They believed the ending had been written. I knew better. Tomorrow I would begin the rewrite. By the 3rd morning, my motel room had turned into a war room. Stacks of labeled files, sticky notes spreading across the walls, emails from clients who didn't trust the new regime. I wasn't grieving anymore, I was documenting. Every day brought fresh failures from Leonard's camp. Curtis reported that the crane on the Riverside site had failed, but Dorian refused to authorize repairs. Use the backup, he barked, not realizing Tasha had already sold it 6 months earlier. 3 subcontractors had walked off other projects because invoices were unpaid. Liability insurance was about to lapse because my daughter had been siphoning premiums to cover her art gallery rent. I wrote everything in a black leather journal. Dates, names, consequences. What they thought was my downfall had become my case file. At 3 that afternoon, a knock rattled my door. Through the peephole, I saw an old face. Regina Carter. 20 years earlier, she had mentored me in the construction trade. A black woman who had turned a single flatbed truck into the largest contracting firm in 3 states. She walked in wearing a rain-soaked coat and the kind of presence that could still fill a boardroom. I know what they tried, she said, scanning the evidence on my bed. Your son called me yesterday. Try to snatch contracts under your family's name. Boy doesn't even know the difference between grade A steel and cheap rebar. I told him, come back when you've built something other than excuses. Despite myself, I smiled. Regina slid a folder across the table. I'm not here with pity. I'm here with an offer. My government contracts are blowing up. I need someone to take over the commercial division, quality control, client management, the whole pipeline. Full partnership track, corner office in the Meridian Tower. The salary was double what I had ever taken home from my own company. The perks, car allowance, profit sharing, were luxuries I'd never let myself claim. But what made me pause was the client list inside. Every name that had called me in the past week was already whispering about defecting to Regina's firm. When do you need an answer? I asked. You've got a week, she said. But one project, the Rivers development, is already requesting you specifically. That night, I ventured out for groceries. The motel vending machine couldn't sustain me forever. At a discount market across town, I was scanning pasta when a hand clamped my arm. Leonard. His face sagged, his usual swagger gone. Eve, please. You don't understand. Monique, she's dangerous. We're both in trouble. I yanked my arm free. Let go. My voice carried enough that nearby shoppers turned. She's not who I thought. She's done this before, he whispered. You and me, we're both targets now. Through the glass storefront, I saw Monique sitting in her Mercedes, engine idling. A thick-necked man sat beside her, watching us like a bodyguard. I walked straight to the cafe next door, crowded enough to be safe. Dialed Detective Lewis. She's here. Riverside Market. Unknown male with her. Leonard tried to warn me. Stay in public, Lewis ordered. I'm sending a car. From the cafe window, I watched Leonard step out to the Mercedes. Monique rolled her window down. Even from across the lot, her face changed, charm vanishing into fury. Leonard backed up with his palms raised. The big man slid out of the passenger side, advancing with menace. Then in the distance, sirens. Monique and her muscled dove back into the Mercedes and sped off. An hour later, Lewis called again. We missed them, but we checked her movements. She spent the morning at the university library, pulling medical journals on toxic plants that mimic heart conditions. She's escalating. That night I prepared 12 envelopes. 11 were bound for agencies. The IRS, the State Attorney General, the Licensing Board, insurance regulators, even an investigative news station. Each package contained different pieces: fraud, safety violations, suspicious deaths. No one office holding the full puzzle, but together impossible to ignore. The 12th envelope was different. A single photograph, Monique and Leonard rifling through warehouse files at 2:40 a.m. A note in my handwriting. I know everything. Your move. That one would be couriered to her directly. At dawn, I stood in line at the post office, watching the clerk stamp 11 certified mail receipts. By 2 o'clock, the courier would deliver the 12th. And by the time Monique ripped it open, the machine of justice would already be moving. By mid-morning, the machinery had begun grinding. From Regina's glass-walled office in the Meridian Tower, I could see everything. At 9:45, 3 unmarked sedans pulled into the parking lot of Harper & Sons Construction, the company I had carried for 30 years. Agents in windbreakers fanned out with file boxes and warrant folders. Through Regina's telescope, I watched employees cluster at the windows, mouths open, confusion etched across their faces. At 10:15 my phone, silent for nearly 2 weeks, began buzzing like a hornet nest. First message, Leonard. Eve, something's happening. IRS froze our accounts. They're saying fraud. This has to be a mistake. Call me. 5 minutes later, another voicemail. The State Attorney General's here. They're seizing computers. Whatever you think you know, this isn't the way. Please. At 10:30 came Dorian, his voice clipped but shaky. Mother, you're sabotaging everything. Granddad's legacy. As your son, and as an attorney, I advise you to contact me at once. We can still resolve this privately. By noon, the panic was undeniable. Leonard's voice cracked into rage. How did you find the offshore accounts? You were spying illegally. We'll fight you, Evelyn. Dorian shifted from threats to begging. Mom, OSHA's shutting us down. 3 projects canceled this morning. Please, let's talk rationally. But it was Tasha's message that made me pause. Her voice, once smug and sharp, now cracked with fear. Mom, my gallery's been seized. They said it was funded with stolen money. I don't have anywhere to go. The apartment was in the company's name. My cards don't work. I don't even know how to cook. Please call me. 42 missed calls in total. I saved each voicemail. Evidence of collapse, not compassion. At 2:03, The courier confirmed Monique's envelope had been delivered. At 2:47, Sarah Dubose, the investigator, sent me photos. Monique standing on her penthouse balcony, shrieking while hurling Leonard's suits into the wind. Tailored jackets fluttered down like surrender flags. Neighbors leaned from their balconies to gawk. She found the photos in the package, Sarah explained. Pictures of Leonard with 2 different women at hotel bars. He had been playing her while she was playing him. She's losing control. The video feed showed Leonard arriving, looking up at his wardrobe raining onto the street. Monique appeared at the balcony railing again, this time flinging his laptop. It exploded against the pavement. Leonard backed up, security holding him at bay, while she screamed about betrayal. Moments later, she stormed into the lobby with scissors, threatening to slash his car seats. By nightfall, Leonard was holed up in a roadside motel, the same chain where I had been staying, just 3 doors down. The irony was almost poetic. That afternoon, Regina and I drove across town, visiting clients who had already begun wavering. The Rivers development, the largest in the region, was first. Michael Rivers himself leaned across his drafting table. Dorian threatened me with lawsuits this morning. Then the news broke about federal raids. I want Regina's company to take over, with you managing personally. By evening, 6 contracts had switched hands. Combined value, nearly $9 million, more than my old firm's annual revenue last year. That night, I sat with Regina in her office, sipping bitter coffee as the last government van pulled out of Harper & Sons' lot. You know the beauty of it, she said, gazing through her telescope. You didn't destroy them. You just removed yourself, and the truth did the rest. My phone buzzed again. Leonard's 43rd text. Patricia knows about the other women. She's threatening me. I don't know what you've started, but it's burning everything down. I deleted it. Tomorrow night, the evening news would air Dana Lewis's investigative report. By week's end, the Harper name would be nothing but a warning whispered at trade shows. But tonight, I sat in Regina's tower, looking down at a city I had built structure by structure, one that was now ready to carry me into my next chapter. The next evening, the downfall played out live. On Channel 7, investigative reporter Dana Lewis stood outside the shuttered Harper & Sons headquarters. Behind her, workers in reflective vests pried bronze letters off the facade. Each hollow clang echoed like a funeral bell. Tonight, we investigate the sudden collapse of one of the region's most trusted construction companies, Dana announced, amid federal raids and multiple arrests. I switched to Channel 5 at Detective Lewis's urging. The footage showed Leonard being led out of a roadside motel in handcuffs, his once prized suits replaced by rumpled clothes. His head hung as agents loaded him into a cruiser. Minutes later, cameras captured Dorian's arrest at his downtown law office. Through the glass doors, colleagues watched as boxes of files were carted out. His senior partners backed away as if his disgrace were contagious. Tasha's arrest was quieter, but no less humiliating. Federal notices papered across her gallery's front windows. She sat slumped in the back office, surrounded by unsellable art. The dream she'd built on stolen funds had dissolved into tape and silence. And then Monique. News helicopters circled her penthouse as agents tried to enter. She screamed about conspiracies, about being set up. When they dragged her out, still wearing designer heels and a silk robe, she looked less like a queen and more like a cornered animal. Reporters noted the investigation into 2 previous sudden deaths in her past. The following morning, Detective Lewis laid it out in grim detail. She planned your erasure, Evelyn. Divorce first, then a reconciliation dinner 3 months later. Digitalis poisoning to mimic a heart attack. Once you were gone, Leonard was next. She already had documents drafted to secure his assets. He thought he was the predator, but he was always the prey. I returned to Regina's office that afternoon to find my name freshly painted on the glass. Harper Carter Construction, Partners. The corner office overlooked my old company's building, now dark and foreclosed. Letters began arriving over the weeks that followed. One from Dorian, written in a trembling hand from county lockup. Mom, I know I don't deserve this, but please send money for commissary. It's not safe in here. Another from Tasha, 3 tear-streaked pages admitting she didn't even know how to wash dishes, let alone build a life. Leonard's note came through his public defender, insisting he'd been manipulated, begging me to testify to his good character. I filed them all in a folder labeled birthday gifts. They had given me divorce papers for my 58th birthday. Life had returned the favor with the arrest warrants for theirs. 6 months later, the news stopped covering the scandal. Leonard got 7 years. Monique got life without parole. Dorian served 2 years and lost his law license forever. Tasha worked off probation at a halfway house. Meanwhile, I stood in my new office as the sun set, surrounded by photos of barbecues with Curtis's family, ribbon cuttings at projects that bore my touch, contracts signed with clients who followed me because of trust, not nameplates. The leather chair in my apartment was mine alone, the dining table seated for instead of 8, but every plank of it belonged to me. When Regina toasted me at the partnership ceremony, her words rang true. Evelyn Harper rebuilt herself and our division at the same time. She turned betrayal into foundation. Today, she becomes my equal partner, though she always has been in every way that counts. The applause that filled the room was different. It wasn't for someone's wife or someone's mother. It was for me. That night, watching city lights blink awake through the glass, I thought of the lesson carved out of ashes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't tearing your enemies down. It's letting them collapse under their own weight while you build something stronger from the ruins. And I had. Betrayal can break you, or it can build the fire that forges your strength. Evelyn didn't just survive. She rebuilt, proving that the sharpest justice is letting those who wronged you destroy themselves while you rise higher. If this story of revenge and resilience gripped you, don't stop here. Hit that like button right now, drop a comment sharing the moment that shocked you most, and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story of survival, payback, and triumph. Because sometimes, the best endings are the ones you write for yourself.